Have you ever seen The Real World hit a spoiled brat? In high school, there was a spoiled rich girl who loved to bully others, shove people around, and constantly play the "do you know who my dad is" card. I couldn't stand her the entire time we were in school. During my senior year, my boyfriend broke up with me. One day after school, I was storming down the hall, furious, when she saw me and made a snide remark about my shirt. Already on edge, I snapped and told her to get lost. She didn't like that one bit, followed me to my locker, slammed the door shut, and shoved me. She started to say something, but I didn't care anymore. I punched her straight in the nose. She ended up in the nurse's office, and I got summoned to the principal's office the next day. When I walked in, she was sitting there with a bandaged nose, her dad, and the principal. I thought I was doomed. The principal showed us the hallway footage, and I leaned back, ready to face my punishment. To my shock, her dad put his hand on my shoulder and smiled. He turned to his daughter and said, "Thank her." We both stared at him in disbelief. She protested, "Why should I thank her? She broke my nose." Her dad calmly replied, "Because if I had seen you act like that, you'd have broken more than just your nose." What's the biggest bullet you've ever dodged? I woke up in the dead of night with sharp chest pain. My husband immediately panicked, fearing it might be a heart attack. I reassured him it was nothing, but he insisted we go to the hospital. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking it was unnecessary. When we arrived, the nurse said it was probably a false alarm. Still, my husband asked for a heart check just to be sure. The nurse agreed to run a quick test to ease his concerns. As I watched over his shoulder, the screen suddenly flashed and her face grew tense. She called for assistance and another nurse joined her, both exchanging uneasy glances. Moments later, one of them dashed out and returned with a team of 5. They asked my husband to step back to the waiting room while they began prepping me. Before I could process what was happening, everything went dark. Thankfully, I woke up hours later to find my husband crying and holding my hand. Soon after, the doctor entered and called me the luckiest woman alive. He explained that while the nurse was running the test, I went into cardiac arrest due to a severe blockage. They acted immediately, rushing me into surgery without a second to spare. "You couldn't have chosen a better place for a heart attack," he said with a wry smile. "What's the saddest reason you've ever had to fire someone for?" I once had the most amazing receptionist, but one day things changed. She started coming in looking drained and sad, like she hadn't slept in days. Every time I asked her if she was okay, she'd brush it off with an excuse, saying it was nothing. At first I didn't think much of it, but soon she began calling in sick, almost every Friday. It got so bad that I had to tell her she needed to be more dependable. She apologized profusely and promised it wouldn't happen again. Unfortunately, calling in sick escalated to not showing up at all. I tried pressing her to explain, but she wouldn't open up. After weeks of this, I made the tough decision to let her go. When I broke the news, she burst into tears but still refused to tell me what was wrong. I felt terrible, but it seemed like the only option. The next day, one of her coworkers asked why I had fired her. I explained it was because she was always absent on Fridays. The coworker immediately snapped, calling me heartless. I was confused until she revealed the truth. My receptionist had kidney disease and had dialysis every Friday. She'd hidden it from me, afraid I'd fire her if I knew she was sick. Once I found out, I begged her to come back, and thankfully, she agreed. Who saved my life without even knowing it? My son was a natural-born athlete, and his father and I always encouraged him to pursue sports, but no matter how hard we tried, he only cared about video games. His grades plummeted because he spent every waking moment gaming. When he turned 14, we suggested he get a job since money was tight, but he'd brush it off, claiming he was going to be a gaming YouTuber. His father scoffed, saying he was destined for homelessness, and blamed me for his lack of ambition. Shortly after, his father left us and money became even tighter. At 18, my son crossed a line. One night, he took money from my purse without asking and used it to buy a new gaming laptop. I was furious, yelling at him to get a job and give up on his unrealistic dreams. The next day, I calculated our expenses and realized we couldn't make rent that month. Desperate, I tried to sell his laptop, but he wouldn't let me near it, insisting it would help us. Resigned to my fate, I prepared for eviction, but then something unexpected happened. The landlord never showed up. It turned out my son had a video go viral, earning him over $5,000. He used that money to pay 3 months of rent upfront. That was 2 years ago. Now he earns a full-time income from YouTube, and his father has made several attempts to re-enter our lives.